For me, that is what I'm interested in, is the smaller moments. Very small, intimate moments. Even though it's this historical, epic project, it's not about the battle and the big things. It was about, for me, it's about those moments.
I ordered you to stop, Yusuf.
أعطيها اشرب.
So I want to start from the beginning. There are a lot of moments in history, obviously, that could be an entry point to what we are witnessing in Palestine today. But you chose this moment in time, this very definitive moment. Tell me a little bit about your connection to this story, how you arrived at it.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. The period itself of the revolt of 1936 was something I grew up hearing about all my life. I think many Palestinians have. It was the beginning of this nationwide strike and revolt that went across classes. It was really a widespread moment, and arguably one of the longest anti-colonial uprisings at the time against the British. Now, I had always heard about it. I was very interested in the period because it also felt that it never ended, right? That things have continued, and it's been a constant since then of a long struggle for freedom. But when I started doing the research, another thing struck me about it, which I hadn't heard about, which is the violence of it, like how that I got from the British historians, and that I discovered all that and how that system was really set up by the British almost to the T of what we see today. All of it was set up by the British, and that was the beginning of, I think, the writing for me.
And as I was sitting here and watching the end credits, these powerful words, filmed on location in Palestine, and that was obviously a really big and treacherous journey for you. At one point, as I understand, you had to move to production to Jordan after October 7th. Tell us how that process worked out for the production and how you navigated it.
It was a very big film for us. We never work on this scale. I had never worked on this scale. I'd never made anything this big, and I think for most of my team it was the same. So it took about 8 years to write and finance the project. We don't have support for cinema where we live, so a lot of our films are co-productions with France or Europe. First day of shooting was October 14th, 2023. It was a complete shutdown. We had to evacuate the whole team. The entire film was supposed to had been recce'd and prepared to shoot in Palestine. We lost all the vehicles we'd built, the village, all of it. Weeks went by with us trying to figure out what to do. I was starting then by the financiers receiving proposals to film elsewhere, which was really hard and heartbreaking for me because the film is so much about the land as a character in this specific place, and we live in Palestine, we work in Palestine. So we relocated to Jordan. We shot a big part of the film there, and I insisted that we have to finish it where it began. So eventually we were able to come back. We had a smaller team, but we finished the film in November 2024.
Absolutely incredible. What a story. I mean, and we're talking about the scale of the production, which is obviously really powerful and impressive, but I think equally powerful in the movie is the intimate moments, is those smaller human moments. Tell me a little bit about your writing process, focusing on these threads.
Yeah, for me, that is what I'm interested in, is the smaller moments and the very small, intimate moments. Even though it's this historical, epic project, it's not about the battle and the big things. It was about, for me, it's about those moments. Karim's, case that he can't endure, that all that violence that he witnesses. I mean, that how people react to things in different ways, and it's. The tragedy, I think, of the story and the celebration of the resilience. For me, Afra at the end is I leave it open-ended, but for me, it's despite everything, there's a hopefulness in that, and there's a beauty in her, and that the future, and there's something about the future that I believe in, and I see that in her, and that in the end.
And I'm really also deeply moved by you acknowledging very intentionally women's role in these history of resistance. Sometimes they can be overlooked. That also seemed a very intentional path for you in this movie.
Yeah, I think for me that, you know, anybody who knows Palestinian women or Arab women in general are very active members and very much in the forefront. So it was very natural, and for like Hiam Abbas, playing that role, she really connected very deeply with the role. She was like, it's my grandmother. I feel like I'm channeling my grandmother and the power of my grandmother. And those, for us, I think, are naturally there, but they have been erased. They haven't been. Those stories are not told. And a lot of people come to Palestine to make films. They don't see the women. They don't see us. So we get left out of the story in those films. But when it's from within, I think you do see a different perspective.
Definitely. And maybe going back to the scale of the production that we were talking about, I can't even wrap my head around the number of sets and set pieces you've dressed, and really terrific costume design. So what was your way into them? How hands-on were you with your team of artisans?
Yeah, very hands-on, but they're a team that are an incredible group of people that I've worked with. We all live in Palestine, which meant that we also had, besides the official 10 months of pre-production, we had been working for years before that. All those details are very personal to us. All those objects and all the things and the way things look and the color and all of that is very much ours and from us. That was something very special. And then we had the advantage of all the photography and the archive of the period that we could look at and talk about. And there's a lot of scenes in the film that are very direct references to very specific moments. The radio inauguration, if you see photographs of the radio inauguration or the women's demonstration, women are dressed the way the women in that demonstration are dressed. There's almost, even certain characters look exactly like people from the photographs, or even Khulud with that fur, that fox fur that she's wearing. There's a picture of the radio inauguration, and there's a woman in the front row sitting there with this fox fur exactly like that. So it was like archive coming to life in a way.
I want to ask you about the idea of, making this film that is almost 100-year-old history, but it's also very much about today. And as you're kind of depicting this dark period, another maybe even darker one unfolding around you, what was it like for you to navigate that, not only as a filmmaker, but as a person in the world? What was the emotional toll of that?
It's a project that was made with a lot of love and a tremendous amount of pain for everybody involved. Every day was pain, and putting this pain into something that we believed in. The contemporary side of it, the fact that it's still going on, there's something, the cyclical nature of this story was part of the original script. I didn't know that what was going to happen, while we were shooting was going to become also part of that story. So it was already urgent and already felt contemporary and already felt like this is our story. And then we were filming over the last 2 years, and there were days that were, I think everybody dealt with it in their own ways. There was something very raw in what we were doing, and it brought us also closer together, I think.
And maybe as a last question, I want to ask you about this poem that you allude to throughout the movie. What was the significance of that for you, and how did you braid it into the narrative?
The poem that's at the end?
Yes.
The poem at the end is actually it's a poet from Gaza who was killed in December 2023 with his family. They were in their apartment, and he's an amazing poet, somebody whose work I read. And when I read that poem, I felt that it really also is part of this story of continuation and resilience, and that you keep going. And it was a way to connect to now without having to show now or talk about now, but it was that.
Annemarie, thank you so much for this wonderful movie.
Thank you.
And thank you for this conversation.